Bienvenidos, Fright fans. Welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Jaime and Fuego.
I'm producer Dave.
And we are here for more of our 25th anniversary of the Jurassic Park film coverage in anticipation of this new film, Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic World, which is going to be coming out this Thursday. But Dave and I are both very big fans, along with Cecil, of the original Michael Crichton source material that came out in 1990. Yes, we are going to be talking about the inspiration for this film franchise, the first Jurassic Park novel. When did you first read this, dude? Before you saw the film?
Fell in drenching sheets, hammering the corrugated... No, we're not going to actually read the whole thing. I first read this before the first film came out.
Oh, so you saw it... Okay,
so
you
I
had
read...
that basis.
I had read this book, so I think the book came out in
1990.
Yeah, 90. And I think I read it in 91. I think I was 11.
Oh, wow.
And I devoured it. I read it in paperback to the point where I had to buy another copy because I had broken the spine,
falling apart,
and
losing
ripped apart.
pages.
And one of the things I used to do is just like reread certain sections like over and over again, like the really cool sequences that they do have in the book.
There's some very cool action set pieces and passages too.
So I read the book before the first film, so I had a great appreciation for. I'm a huge Michael Crichton fan, so I've read everything Michael Crichton's ever written.
Yeah, and I have not. I've only read his two, Jurassic books, and that's about it. Although I've always been interested in, like Sphere and, going back to Andromeda Strain and Westworld and stuff. Or actually, now Westworld is just a film, right?
Yeah. But Terminal Man, Andromeda Strain, what is it? There's a Pirates one.
He also did
The Bay, and then Shrink.
Didn't he do
Shrunk.
Disclosure as well?
Disclosure.
Yeah.
I liked Disclosure. I recently rewatched that.
It
was good.
That's a good film. Yeah.
Anyway,
it does add some techie stuff in there, but nonetheless, Crichton. The only stuff of his I've read is these two books.
This is his magnum opus in a way because this is his most popular book. This was his most popular story, and I think it's his most common theme that he has is that we try to use science to recreate ourselves in the images of gods and do these crazy, amazing things at what cost and chaos, and that the life finds a way. And all these themes are really more prevalent in the book than in the films.
Yes.
I think the films show it more than explain it like it is in the books. And also, I think the books give a more in-depth look into all the characters.
Far more, in fact.
So let's get started. I mean, basically, the story is very similar to the original film. There are a lot of differences. The overall plot, though, is pretty similar.
Yeah. There's some extended bits, honestly. Once like Grant and the kids get together, the opening is a little bit different because basically you, as opposed to them loading the raptors in and stuff like you see at the beginning of the film, you have this woman working in Costa Rica as a doctor who has somebody who is taken to her, and it looks like it's an animal attack, and they're just denying that in fact was the case, and you suspect immediately. You're like, is that a raptor that attacked this guy? Because he says Velociraptor, and she's trying to find like the basis of the term, like what language it was or whatever. And then you go into some sightings of dinosaurs in Costa Rica, on the mainland, aside from the two islands, and you've got compies doing some pretty terrible stuff. The attack of the girl that happens at the beginning of The Lost World is at the very beginning of this book, and the bit that really got me that I'd forgotten about from when I first read it was something that happens with compies jumping into the window where there's a midwife that has a newborn baby that she has
the baby gets bitten.
The baby gets eaten by the compies. Like she discovers like 3 of them in the crib eating this child, and the cover-up aspect is so fascinating to me, which I'd forgotten about because of the fact that there's all these people just denying the fact that there could actually be dinosaurs, and then she in turn this midwife dispels that by she's worried that she's gonna get wrecked over the coals and in some serious trouble for not paying attention to a newborn, and so she doesn't report this animal attack. And so there's just this series of events where a sample of a compy gets sent to somebody, and the person in New York or Chicago or wherever it is, the expert can't see it for months because they're on vacation. So there's all these things that don't send an uproar through the scientific community because of convenience and chance and stuff like that. And
what it is the beginning of chaos theory taking place.
Yeah,
truly. And even the first child, just double check, it's first iteration. So Ian Malcolm's theory on chaos is that
once quotes throughout, which are cool.
once you actually try, have controlled a system, now the system is going to rebel and fight out against, and that's what we're shown at the very beginning of the book.
Yep.
Is the leak. They think that they've bred these dinosaurs with a lysine deficiency, so that they're dependent on the food that they're given on the island.
They can't escape.
But life finds a way, and we see that right from the beginning.
Yeah.
That not only does Michael Crichton say, hey, look, right at the beginning of the film, right at the beginning of the book, I'm going to explain, hey, look, everything they're about to tell you is not working. You know what I mean? So now we go through the whole thing, and they show all the, very similar to the film, Ian Malcolm and Sam Grant, Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
The helicopter, Hammond showing up with the champagne and saying, I'll fund your dig first. I mean, so all that's, it's there. I think you made an observed point that Hammond is different in the book than he is in the films.
He's much more opportunistic, and he does say at one
he's more of a billionaire versus the philanthropist who's in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, he actually says at one point that he wants to make money off of this scenario, as opposed to just being so wide-eyed and fascinated with the creatures and almost childlike in his interest with them, and just wanting to give that similar experience and perspective to other visitors and to children and his own grandchildren, no less. He's much more of a character with a dark side to him, and I think that's why he falls to the particular fate that he does, because even late in the book, he's bitching about having the grandchildren even there and how they've done nothing but mess with things, and been a hindrance and an inconvenience, and why did I even invite them in the first place? Oh, that's right, because I wanted the publicist and the lawyer to see the children there and be reassured because of that.
Right.
And it's funny to see how the Gennaro character in the book, in the film, is basically the culmination of those two different people in the novel.
Yeah,
so
they
mushed
the
character
lawyer all the shitty characteristics to Hammond so that he could be the the philanthropist versus the sort of scheming billionaire who's using incredible technology. And that's another cool thing about the book is they really get into the technology, and they
deep into the possibility of how this could have actually been done, as opposed to skimming over it like they do. Yeah.
And honestly, the main conceit of this science is that the DNA would be viable in the amber, because they've proven that that's not viable.
Although, haven't they found frozen mammoth DNA?
Right. So I mean, if they're going to find
a
frozen dinosaur, we might get some DNA, but
the amber is no dice.
The amber is no dice. No, it's a beautiful conceit.
Yeah.
Because you see it happen, and you're like, oh my god, that totally makes sense. That could totally work. But
there's a fantasy
DNA degrades over time, and there's the idea of having 70 million year old DNA is just ridiculous. And so the conceit, even though it is a big conceit, he still works in this whole idea that they're melding the DNA.
Yeah, and also the fact that compared to mammals, amphibians and lizards are easier to clone, because you don't need the white chromosome, you just need the reds. And I mean, they go into some seriously deep stuff, and he does have to have the medical background. I mean, he's the guy who developed ER. I think he was a doctor, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I mean, he was fairly entrenched in this sort of stuff.
Well, every Michael Crichton book is this completely and thoroughly researched, and honestly, he has a very strong opinion about science, and he's a science fiction writer. And that's what I think is so great about not only this book but all of Michael Crichton's books, is that there's a layer of thematic necessity that happens in all of his books, whether it's fear, because fear is sort of the same type of thing. They find this thing at the bottom of the ocean, and they're like, hey, we're gonna control it somehow. We're gonna find a way to use it or talk to it or whatever, and it all goes wrong because, again, chaos. The life finds a way. I keep saying that, but
it's the theme here, man.
Nedry's character in this,
not too drastically different from his portrayal in the film.
You just get you get his motivation way better.
Yeah.
Because
he also has a little bit more conviction too, because he planned on stowing the embryos he was stealing, going back, making sure everybody was
and I think he was planning the same thing in the film.
Yeah.
I think that just the same thing happens. It just goes wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The second you think that you have control of something, that's when it slips out of your
chaos
hands.
comes. And when you think you have everything in the palm of your hand.
we got this great stuff with Ian, and we got this great stuff with Grant and why do I keep forgetting her name. Laura Dern's character.
Sadler. Yeah.
Sadler.
Yeah, at least Sadler.
You know, I mean,
it's funny how they're not lovers in this, you know,
right.
And also how Grant likes kids in this compared to in the. I mean, it's just
they
some of those
some
things
beautiful
that they
little flip things. But overall, I still think that the book holds up versus the film. I think the film is a beautiful adaptation of this book,
and it improves in some ways, especially with the finale, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the biggest. That's really the biggest change. The dinosaurs breeding is a much bigger plot in the book. It's a much bigger investigation that's going on with Sam Neill's character, Dr. Grant, and is a much larger global effect of these dinosaurs escaping the island. That's really what the original, that's the plot of the book is.
Yeah, because halfway through, Tim, which is another flip-flop they do, which is funny, how, you know, Tim is the older one, and, you know, Lexi is the younger one in comparison, and he's a computer expert, and yet they still maintain in the film that he still loved, you know, Grant and his work and stuff like that. But halfway through, when they're first on the initial tour, he believes he sees dinosaurs jumping onto one of the boats that's leaving the dock in the distance, and so they know right then and there, before the communication breaks down, that there's dinosaurs leaving the island. It's like it's already been observed, and so yeah, it does become a bigger plot point later on, but.
And in the book, they do one little thing where he jumps over that log and he sees the eggs, you know, on the ground. But in the book, that sequence actually leads to what I think is the best action sequence, the waterfall sequence that sort of takes place in the second one, actually takes place in the first book, where it's the T-Rex hunting Grant and
both the kids.
And they're hiding in the waterfall, and it's great. It's a great fucking, because it's like all the other dinosaurs are there, and they all run away when the T-Rex comes out, and they're, you know,
and that's the one thing where, dude, it once they get on that raft or you know, whatever it is,
there's
it feels like
river adventure.
It feels like you're getting on a ride. It feels like you're in a theme park, because as you go through, you see more Dilophosaurus.
That is one scene I would have liked to see in the film.
And they go in the atriary or the aviary or whatever, and there's the whole encounter with it. It's not pterodactyls or pterodons. It's a different kind, because they're like carrier flying birds. I would have to consult the chapter just to double check.
I don't remember.
But yeah, that is a damn good sequence that I was very happy to see finally show up in the third film, albeit, you know, drastically changed. But just to have that end game at the waterfall, and they discover the small baby raptor at that particular point that they take with them. You also have a baby T-Rex in this, and similar to what you see happen in the second film to Hammond's nephew or whatever, the baby T-Rex eats the publicist guy, you know, halfway through the movie. And so that it is one cool thing where the book, for even if you've watched the film, the book will keep you guessing, because there's certain characters who live in the film that die in this, and vice versa. So if you like the film, you really, really need to read this, because it will keep you on your toes, and it will keep you guessing.
And it is different than the film. There's a different tone to this. Like I said before,
it's definitely darker, and it's more scientific.
Michael Crichton writes from sort of a semi-alarmist perspective, where he's like, hey, look what science is doing. What happens if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of his whole shtick. So
Malcolm's big thing at the end, where he's all doped up on the morphines and stuff after being injured, and he's talking about, you know, you can make a boat and control the boat, but you can't control the ocean. And, you know, you can make a plane and you can fly through the air, but you can't control the weather you're going to encounter and stuff like that. It's like, you can control things to a degree, but that chaotic aspect will always eventually rear its ugly head and knock you down a few pegs. And, you know, whereas the theme of this book in a lot of ways for me is creation and the aspirations to it and the problems that happen with it. As you probably remembered, like the second book is really the theme of extinction and, you know, why it happens and stuff like that. But both of those tie into, you know, chaos theory, I guess, and the fact that you can create and how can things be dispelled and destroyed and whatnot. And they explore more so that latter part in the next book. But yeah, this one is a little more hopeful.
You can't contain nature.
No, you can't.
And they're very heavy-handed with it in the film, but in the book it's even more expressive, because when Malcolm is having those conversations and explaining those things in the book, there's more to it. He shows graphs.
So much.
You know what I mean? Like, there's like science involved.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. Like, I just opened up to a random page, and here's a table of information of like, oh, this is what the computer startup system looks like, and the grid protocols, and I mean, it's just a great piece of cake. Piece of cake. It's delicious.
Yes.
So we recommend it 100%.
Sink your teeth into it.
If you haven't read it. Read it again.
I honestly really don't like the ending of this, though, where they go and they do the egg counting.
We're not going to spoil anything. Yeah, we're not going to spoil anything.
Yeah,
so it does have a different ending, and that's like I think you said it best. It'll keep you guessing if you've only seen the film, and it's definitely worth the read because it's way more in depth, and I think it gives you a greater appreciation of the film because now you know a lot more of the backstories.
Yeah, it's almost like getting the director's cut of the storytelling,
there you go.
But
the author's cut.
The author's cut. There you go. Michael Crichton, author's cut.
He's
Jurassic
awesome.
Park, 1990.
So thanks so much for tuning in and watching our review of the Jurassic Park original book. If you would like to continue watching our Jurassic World coverage, click the links in the description or the end caps, which will show up at the end of the film somewhere.
Yep, we're going to be covering the rest of the films throughout the rest of this week. So tomorrow we got The Lost World. The next day you're going to see Jurassic Park 3, followed by Jurassic World. And if you have yet to check out our review of the film that we put up earlier today, make sure to scope that as well. So until then, I'm going to extend the grande gracias. I have been Jaime and Fuego.
And I'm producer Dave.
Until next time, remember, Dino fans, stay scared.